On this Tuesday night, Kamala Harris's chosen one. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is named her running mate.
Let us fight for the promise of our future.
What he's fought for and how he could potentially win over voters. Disturbing allegations. The lawsuits filed against the coach of multiple Olympic champions. Heavy rain and large hail hammer Calgary. Oh no! The damage to vehicles, homes, and even the city's airport. And getting Olympic gold. Yet another historic victory for Canada as swimming champ Summer McIntosh returns to home soil.
And it means the world to see everyone's support for me and for Canada.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Following a frenzied sprint to vet, interview, and weed out potential candidates, we finally know who will be on the ticket with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris as she continues her bid for the White House. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has officially been tapped as Harris's running mate for November's presidential election. The pair held their first rally together in Philadelphia tonight.
Our campaign will reach out to everyone, from red states to blue states. We are running a campaign on behalf of all Americans.
And make no mistake, violent crime was up under Donald Trump. That's not even counting the crimes he committed.
Democrats have billed Tim Walz as the Midwestern partner Harris needs to help reach voters in America's heartland. Jackson Proskow brings us reaction to what some are calling a surprise pick in tonight's top story.
His political stock was already rising faster than any other potential pick. Tim Walz may have ultimately won over Democrats with his viral take on Donald Trump's Republican Party.
These guys are just weird. And it's, you know, they're running for He-Man Women Haters Club or something.
When I grew up, community was a way of life.
The popular two-term governor of Minnesota and former congressman gives Kamala Harris's campaign reach into middle America.
He can relate to Midwestern voters, flyover country, which the Democrats have had extreme difficulty in attracting over the recent election cycles.
Walz is a veteran, a former teacher, football coach, and a hunter. As governor, his legislative record has been progressive and populist, in favor of school lunches, paid parental leave, and reproductive rights.
There's a lot of Tim Walz's backstory that speaks to voters. So while Tim Walz has a very liberal policy record in Minnesota, it's the type of liberal policy record that I think speaks to a lot of kitchen table issues.
Trump and J.D. Vance have been quick to pounce on that record as too liberal.
I think that what Tim Walz's selection says is that Kamala Harris has bent the knee to the far left of her party, which is what she always does.
Republicans are also likely to rehash criticism Walz was too slow to deploy his state's National Guard to quell protests after the murder of George Floyd in 2020, something Walz has acknowledged. After the sudden shakeup at the top of their ticket, Democrats believe Walz can broaden their appeal to voters who have wandered away from the party. More than anything, he has shown he's ready to make a clear case for why voters should reject Donald Trump in a way few others have.
We're not afraid of weird people. No. We're a little bit creeped out, but we're not afraid.
Jackson, it's been a whirlwind couple of weeks in this U.S. presidential race. How have the dynamics shifted since President Biden dropped out of the contest?
Well, Carolyn, Biden was polling well behind Donald Trump. Since Harris has entered the race, though, she's now polling even or slightly ahead of him, essentially within the margin of error. She's doing better than Joe Biden ever was, and she has essentially made this a real race. Now, if the election were held today, it would probably be a toss-up, but there are still 90 days to go. She has momentum on her side, and so the question becomes, can she sustain this long enough to get to the White House?
Jackson Proskow in Washington, thank you. Canada took home another gold medal today with an historic win in women's hammer throw. BC's Cameron Rogers became the first Canadian to medal in the event of the Olympics. Rogers is the top-ranked female hammer thrower in the world. Her win made it a Canadian sweep in the event after Ethan Katzberg won the men's on Sunday. A coach to one of Canada's best-known athletes has been kicked out of the Summer Games as allegations of abuse were made public. The man in question is Rana Reider, the private coach of sprinting superstar Andre DeGrasse. Redmond Shannon breaks down the accusations and the action taken against him by Canada's Olympic Committee.
Rana Reider, a personal coach to two Olympic champions, Italy's Marcel Jacobs and Canada's Andre DeGrasse. Reider's accreditation to be in Paris now revoked. On Sunday, the Times newspaper revealed that 3 women have filed lawsuits against Reider in the US. The statements of claim include an allegation by an anonymous woman that she was groomed, assaulted, then raped for 5 years, starting after she turned 18. Athlete Hannah Cunliffe alleges Reider touched her inappropriately when giving her a massage. In May, a 12-month sanction against Reider by the safeguarding body US Safe Sport was lifted, imposed after the coach had acknowledged he had had a consensual relationship with an 18-year-old athlete when he was 44. Safe Sport said it presented a power imbalance. The lawyer for Reider says his client has been unjustly stripped of his Olympic coaching credential based on years-old claims in a lawsuit by former athletes seeking financial gain. Reider denies the allegations, which have not been proven in court, and issued a counterclaim alleging the anonymous woman solicited him romantically for her personal gain. On Tuesday, the Canadian Olympic Committee said the accreditation was given on the understanding Reider's probation ended in May, but that on Sunday it learned of new information about the appropriateness of Mr. Reider remaining accredited. On Tuesday evening here at Stade de France, the head coach with Athletics Canada, Glenroy Gilbert, gave an off-camera briefing to Canadian journalists. He said he believes that DeGrasse's preparations will not be hampered by this, that all checks and balances were taken before accrediting Mr. Reider, and that it was a joint decision between Athletics Canada and the Canadian Olympic Committee to remove that accreditation.
As a survivor, I think it's very rare that there's not a good reason why these women came forward.
Former Olympian Alison Forsyth is a survivor of sexual abuse in sport. She now campaigns for better safeguarding.
I would take all of what is being said about a consensual relationship with a power imbalance with a grain of salt. COC and Athletics Canada worked off of the information they had then, and now they're working off the information they have now.
Well, this is the second bad news story regarding coaches associated with Team Canada in the games that have been filled with highlights from the athletes. Carolyn?
Redmond Shannon in Paris, thank you. Cheers, flowers, and Canadian flags welcomed home swimming phenom and triple gold medalist Summer McIntosh this afternoon. The teenage superstar touched down at Toronto's Pearson Airport, still trying to digest her record-setting Olympic Games.
I don't think it's fully sunk in yet. I think the main thing for me when I'm competing is just trying to keep it simple as possible, not really think about what's going to happen afterwards. But now that I'll take some time off training and racing and stuff and swimming in general, that I can kind of enjoy this moment and appreciate all that has happened in the past few weeks.
A little later in the newscast, we'll take a look at how Canadian Olympians like Summer McIntosh are becoming household names. In Paris, there are renewed water quality concerns about the Seine River. World Aquatics canceled a marathon swimming test run today and said a decision on a training session tomorrow will be announced in the morning. The women's and men's marathon swims are set for later this week. Organizers say they are confident the events will still happen in the Seine, but a backup plan is in place. People in southern Alberta are mopping up after a destructive storm pounded Calgary and neighboring communities. Huge hail shattered windows, dented cars, and tore up siding. The damage is severe, and it extends to the airport. Heather Yourex-West reports on the impact.
The deafening sound of Calgary neighborhoods under siege.
Look at this.
Blow after blow from destructive pieces of ice in August. A hailstorm that flooded streets, damaged cars, and left the vinyl sidings of so many homes in ruins.
We were at home, so suddenly we got it's a very loud noise, and it was very scary. It's brutal. It's just happened a couple of years ago, and now it's again.
For residents of these northeast Calgary communities, there is a sense of not again. The hailstorm here in 2020 was the 4th costliest natural disaster in Canadian history. Now, the people here are looking at making repairs once again.
It's raining. It broke through the ceiling. Oh my God!
Calgary's airport cleaning up too.
Oh no! Yeah, we gotta go.
The hail damaging parts of YYC's domestic terminal, prompting the evacuation of several gates and the cancellation of more than a dozen flights.
It's quite impacting. We're trying to be positive about it, but yeah.
Nothing you can do.
You know, we lost everything.
Outside the city, rural properties were also hit hard. Mohammed El Dahar came to Canada as a Syrian refugee. His small farm, focusing on Middle Eastern produce like fava beans and Arabic zucchini, had been the realization of a dream. He now fears this year's crop is a total loss.
My head is broken.
According to Environment Canada, this devastation is the result of a supercell storm, not altogether uncommon during prairie summers. Its consequences painful just the same. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
Water is now surging down the Chilcotin River in the BC interior after it was blocked by a landslide last week. The steady flow has washed away at least one empty structure. There are concerns of more bank erosion. Protective measures are being put in place as far away as Metro Vancouver. Grace Key is monitoring the situation downstream in Hope, BC. Grace.
Well, we haven't seen any debris floating through town yet, but they are certainly not taking any chances. There are signs up along the Fraser River just warning people to stay clear because of that flood watch. Well, right now, the natural dam created from that landslide is decreasing 2.5 meters an hour. Slopes and banks remain unstable, so there continues to be a risk for landslides and more evacuations can be issued. Further down along the Fraser River from that landslide, you can start to see debris floating down. For now, the worst case scenario still seems to have decreased drastically. The mayor of Hope is concerned that debris could be a problem for next spring as well.
So just around the corner, just up here about 4K, the river is a third the width of it is here. So as it comes down here, it's going to disperse out. As the water drops, that wood's going to be on the beach all the way up. Next spring when the water comes up, all of that's coming down. So there's going to be a lot more debris next year than there is this year even.
Experts are still keeping a very close eye on the situation. The water can change and there is concern where that debris will land. Carolyn?
Grace Key in Hope, BC, thank you. Tropical storm Debbie is churning through the southeastern U.S. after killing at least 5 people in Florida and Georgia.
Would you look at that? Golly.
The storm swamped entire neighborhoods as it made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane along Florida's Gulf Coast Monday. It lashed the state with torrential rain and powerful winds, forcing more than 1,800 flights to be canceled. Some of the danger comes from how slowly the storm is moving as it heads towards the Carolinas. Remnants are expected to reach New York State and parts of Atlantic Canada. Calls for an investigation coming up. The questions about how a man with suspected ties to the so-called Islamic State was able to immigrate to Canada. The Conservatives are calling for an emergency meeting to investigate how a man immigrated to Canada after he allegedly participated in violence overseas with the so-called Islamic State. National security sources have told Global News an ISIS video released in 2015 is believed to show 62-year-old Ahmed Fouad Mustafa El-Didi dismembering a prisoner with a sword. El-Didi was still approved for Canadian citizenship after the video was released. The RCMP arrested El-Didi and his 26-year-old son at a Toronto area hotel last week as they were allegedly about to commit a terrorist attack. The elder El-Didi was also charged with committing an aggravated assault for ISIS in 2015.
Lives are at stake when national security systems don't do their job. Lives are at stake when people with connections to terrorist organizations are allowed into Canada and granted citizenship. Evidence exists that
For an emergency meeting to be called, the Conservatives need the support of the NDP and the Bloc. Tense times in the Middle East ahead. Hezbollah vows retaliation after a commander was killed. Hamas says it has chosen its new leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, a man Israel has accused of being behind the October 7th attacks. Sinwar replaces Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated in Tehran last week. Lebanese militant group Hezbollah says retaliation will come, and that's stoking fear of a wider conflict in the Middle East. Crystal Gamansing reports.
The blaring warnings of incoming danger. Hezbollah says it fired drones towards northern Israel Tuesday. The rising smoke and damage on the ground said to be the result of Israeli interceptions. Last week's assassinations of two leaders in Iran's so-called axis of resistance, Ismail Haniyeh, the political chief of Hamas, and Fuad Shukr, a top Hezbollah military commander, has forced world leaders to again try and tamp down hostilities.
It is urgent that all parties make the right choices in the hours and days ahead.
America has been widely criticized for its support of Israel in light of the civilian death toll and humanitarian crisis in Gaza. That could be why a U.S. airbase in Iraq was attacked Monday. According to CNN, U.S. officials say Iran-aligned militias are responsible for hitting the base with 2 rockets. 5 service members were reportedly injured, along with 2 U.S. contractors. Speaking with his Egyptian counterpart, Lebanon's foreign minister said, "We are working to ensure any response to Israel does not trigger total war." Hezbollah wields considerable political and military power in Lebanon. Smoke could be seen rising from the southern border areas. Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah made a televised address vowing retribution that would be, in his words, strong and effective. Canada and its G7 partners expressed deep concern about heightening tensions on Sunday, with many nations urging their citizens to get out of Lebanon while they can.
We didn't want to take any risk, actually.
We are engaged in intense diplomacy, pretty much round the clock.
An intense effort that began after the deadly Hamas-led October 7th attacks on Israel. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
In Bangladesh, the president has dissolved parliament one day after the country's prime minister quit and fled to India in the wake of violent anti-government protests. Video from Monday shows protesters storming parliament after Sheikh Hasina stepped down. She'd been in power for 15 years, but demonstrations against her policies and leadership escalated, fueling demands for her resignation. Nearly 300 people have been killed since protests began mid-July. Muhammad Yunus, the former Nobel Peace Prize winner, has been appointed to oversee an interim government to restore order until new elections are set. Capturing Canadian hearts. Next, the stars of Team Canada at the Paris Olympics. There was a surprise guest at the Olympic surfing competition in Tahiti on Monday. This whale was caught on camera as it breached a safe distance from athletes. Tahiti has an abundance of marine life, including whales, who regularly gather around the Pacific Islands. Well, back in Paris, it feels like Team Canada has made history almost every day. From hammer throw to fencing, rugby to judo, our country has medaled in several events where they usually don't take the podium. As Eric Sorensen explains, this year's Games are introducing Canadians to a cast of new Olympic stars.
One of the charms of the Olympics is the sudden fame for athletes unfamiliar to most sports fans. How many Canadians cared about the hammer throw before this summer? Cameron Rogers brought down the hammer on Canada's second gold medal in the event on her 5th of 6 throws. The 25-year-old joins Ethan Katzberg, 2 British Columbians, creating newfound excitement for one of the oldest Olympic events. Some will turn that temporary recognition into something lasting. Swimmer Summer McIntosh is that rare Olympic athlete whose achievements look certain to endure over multiple Olympics. After winning 3 gold medals and 4 in total, the family back in Toronto can finally relax together.
We're so proud of Summer, how hard she's worked and all her hard work's paid off.
Among the unique experiences, carrying Olympic medals through airport security.
It was actually funny going through security. They were like, what are these round like medal things? And I was like, they're Olympic medals. And they're like, how many do you have? And I was like, 4. And they're like, okay, you're good.
There are athletes whose popularity preceded them to the Olympics. The men's basketball team with widely known stars such as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and R.J. Barrett. Alas, before a raucous crowd in Paris, France upset the Canadians. As one of the new top teams in international basketball, high expectations can also lead to greater disappointment at the Olympics.
It really felt as though that team had resonated with so many people in Canada, but across the world. And so it's obviously just really sad for so many Canada basketball fans.
But the Olympics are mostly about new faces earning a well-deserved place in the spotlight. And these games will stand out for a new Canadian sports prowess, Hammer Time. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And here's a look at the medal table in Paris after 11 days, sorted by gold medals won. The United States leads with 24, followed closely by China with 22. Canada sits in 11th with 6. And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. Tonight's Your Canada is the Yukon River in Whitehorse. We love seeing your Canada. Please send your photos to our new email address, globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again tomorrow.